Scripture. October 2nd, we're reading the second lecture of 4. Today we're going to talk about how we got the Old Testament in the order that it's in. What we know today from the Old Testament. Before we begin, let us pray. Dear God, Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for all your gifts and blessings for they're from your gracious hands. We thank you for a time to gather together as members of your church here in Virginia Beach. We remember our friends around the world, especially in places like Aleppo, where there are Christians this day who are suffering and not able to worship and suffer from want, and their safety, their very lives are in danger. We remember them. We ask that your angels would protect them. And we pray especially for the Christians there, that you would help them, preserve them, and help them to be neighbors to those who don't know Christ, so that by their life and by what they do, they would be lights to your gospel. We thank you for our families here. We thank you for our freedom, our nation. We thank you for our world. In Christ's name. Amen. All right, again, welcome. This is, again, the second lecture of 4. A little plug for the next set of lectures. So we'll go until October the 16th. And then October the 23rd, I'm going to start 8 weeks on Matthew. Because come December 1st, the lectionary will change from Luke, which you're seeing most Sundays is Luke. We'll start in Matthew right around the 1st of December, right after Thanksgiving. So what I'm going to do for about 8 weeks is to set you up for that. And we'll go through the major themes of Matthew, what to look for when you're hearing the Gospels, when you hear things like the Beatitudes, or when Jesus is talking about the destruction of the temple, what that means, what you should look for. And we'll set you up for that. What we're going to do, we're taking this lecture again in a video way, not good English. Me flunk English, that's not possible. And in an audio manner as well. My goal, my hope is that I can put them all together. We can put them all together in a package so you can listen to them. I'm taking these for some folks that are driving and doing some other things. So, with technology being the way it is, I'm hoping that it can be done. So, I want to wish you a happy New Year if you're in Israel today, or you're from the Jewish faith. You will be celebrating Rosh Hashanah tonight, the beginning of the New Year. Rosh, if you could lose your head, is at first. Today is begins the days of awe, days of repentance, which ends with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Yom today, Kippor's atonement. If you remember 1973, the Yom Kippur War, when Syria and Egypt attacked Israel, they did it on the Day of Atonement. Everybody was fasting and in synagogue and weren't at work, weren't in the army. That was the day they were attacked. And that's part of the reason it took Israel so long to counter those other two nations, because everybody was kind of out of place back when they were worshiping. So it's a day of, today Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. In traditional Jewish life, in culture, when they think of the first day of the year, they think this is when God created the earth. So when they hear in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, they're thinking Rosh Hashanah. They're thinking that way. So I invite you, it's just serendipitous that it's October 2nd. It's Rosh Hashanah today. We're going to talk about, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. The idea that God's Word is powerful in and of itself. When God speaks, things happen. And again, remember, last week we talked about things like Baal. Next week, I'm going to have visuals. I'm going to show you what Baal actually looks like. It's kind of an odd-looking duck, and he has to be propitiated. He has to be woken up in the morning. Sorry about that. He has to be woken up. He has to be washed. He has to be propitiated. He has to be put back to sleep at night. You have to do all these things for Baal. Well, Yahweh's different. Yahweh speaks and it happens. Certainly there are sacrifices to Yahweh, or worship of Yahweh, but He is the Lord of the universe, where most people in the Middle East are polytheistic, believing gods who need to be kind of motivated to do things. In Yahweh's case, that's just not true. Yahweh works and acts in His own way, beginning with the creation of the universe by the power of His Word. That's why when Jesus says, I word, when he talks about the word of life, he's switching kind of the idea from the temple to himself as the new temple. That's a huge paradigm shift. That's a huge shift in the sensibilities of anyone who's an Israelite. So wait, proper worship is Yahweh in the temple, in the place that we have built where he dwells with his word, his canon. Remember, by the time Jesus is preaching, the canon, the Old Testament, which is they start with Genesis, they end with Chronicles, is in place in the liturgy, in the temple. And it's been there for a long, long time. I would guess that it had already been there 100 years by the time Christ is in ministry. So think about it. You got the temple, where God is, the Holy of Holies, where God dwells, over the ark, where you have the angels. You don't touch the ark. You get killed if you do that. Remember, we saw Raiders of the Lost Ark. Probably not exactly what happened, but pretty close. You remember, is it 1 Kings, when they're taking the ark back from Philistia, back to Jerusalem where it belongs, it actually falls. There's only certain people that can even touch it. Well, it begins to fall, and a guy named Uzzah, trying to be a good soldier, he puts his hand out to stop it, and he gets whacked. He gets killed immediately, because he's not allowed to touch the ark. Why? God's presence demands he stay away from it. That he's so holy and so powerful, and his word is so effective, only certain people can be close to him. And that's the high priest in the temple, with the word, with the canon, with the ark, right there. So when Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, rebuild this temple in 3 days, that's a huge shift. And you can imagine if you're a Pharisee, you're thinking, well, either he's a liar and he needs to be condemned, or he is the Messiah, the chosen one, the one we've been waiting for, the one who's prophesied throughout the canon of the Old Testament, or well, it's their testament, it's their covenant. There's no New Testament, there's an Old Testament that we know is the Old Testament. All right. So again, God's word, number one, in the beginning, let there be light, and there was light. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, something we hold our backs on, and we begin today. And again, it's Rosh Hashanah, so that makes perfect sense. These are the kind of things where you simply say, boy, am I small. God is powerful, all-knowing, all-powerful being. These kind of texts, when you read something like Psalm 22, remember a psalm written by David probably 900 years before Christ's ministry, and said in the temple, said during the liturgy of the temple, my God, why have you forsaken me? And then Jesus says it on the cross. One of his 7 sayings. You're in Israel, you say, man, I've sung this in my synagogue. What's he saying? Man, it's been sung for almost 1,000 years. So when we sing the Psalms, it joins us then to the liturgy that they had. So it's 3,000 years old. That's pretty cool. I think it is. Just to see, now we look back and say, see how this psalm reflected the ministry, the person of Christ? Or in Isaiah 53:5, by his stripes we are healed. The evangelist of the Old Testament, Isaiah, writing 800 years before Christ, talking about how exactly he's going to suffer and die in his state of humiliation. To be able to see those texts and know that you are part of a great thing, that you're part of a team, you're a small part, but you're part of his universe. It knocks our idols. If anything Scripture does, one thing it does is it'll knock your personal idols down, because it's a humbling process. You read a psalm, you don't man, it's really profound. And it say, Lord, have mercy on me. And then you remember, we confess our sins, God who is faithful and just will forgive our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. We can begin again each day. And that's what the Israelites were trying to do. When they came into the temple, they knew God was physically present right there. And that God would be with them. That's why when the temple gets knocked down in 70 AD, they're blown away. Because where is God? Does he exist? Has he turned his face from us? Are we still saved people? So, if anything the Scriptures do, it knocks our idols down, it knocks them over. It makes us realize that we are in the face of the Creator. We say, Lord, have mercy on me, and then we remember the cross. We look back. The Israelites were looking forward to the Messiah. We can look back to him and say, see through his death and resurrection what he's done, and what he will do when he comes again and restores all things and raises the dead. You know, and again, that must have been something on Good Friday. Remember in Matthew, we'll talk about this because one of my favorite verses in all of Matthew. You know, it says as he dies, and the tombs broke open, and many holy people came out of their tombs and appeared to those they knew. How did that work out? You know, hey, you know, Aunt Sarah's at the door. Well, she's dead. Now she got back. You know, well, bring her in. It's Passover. She's probably hungry. You know, it's a foretaste of the feast to come. When we talk about Holy Communion, you know, we're talking about the foretaste of the feast to come, the resurrection of the dead, the new creation. And the Israelites were looking forward to this in the Messiah. When they read the canon, we look forward to what he will do to restore what Adam and Eve destroyed in the garden with the devil. We're looking for that restoration. Our forgiveness, our salvation are assured in what he has done. The new creation is assured in what he will do. We forget that part. He's going to bodily raise us from the dead. He's going to destroy death once and for all. You know, every time we talk about the kingdom of God, we'll talk about this when we get to Matthew in a couple of weeks. What is the kingdom of God? Is it a physical kingdom? Is it the kingdom of Israel? Well, it's about him destroying death. You know, when he touches a leper, he becomes ritually unclean, but actually, he's making the other person, sorry, I keep pointing to you, you're right here on my right hand. So, but he's pushing back. His holiness is pushing back. Imagine the ark, you know, the holiness that the ark had, well, there he is, there's Jesus. He's pushing death back. And he'll push it totally back in the resurrection of the dead. You see that in Isaiah chapter 60, when it talks about heaven and the earth. So again, we'll have visuals next week. I'm going to show you Baal. I'm going to show you some rocks, some stones that have writing in it. I'm going to try to get you copies of, they found this rolled up scroll from a synagogue that was several hundred years before Christ's ministry on earth, but it was actually burned. Somehow it got stuck. They pulled out, they couldn't unwrap it. They know it's a Torah. They couldn't unwrap it because they knew it would fall apart. Well, they were able to use a CAT scan technique and unwrap it through a computer. So we have it all flat now. We can read it word for word, which is amazing without having to unroll it. Thank you, medical professionals out there who are thinking about all this stuff and figured that out and gave it to those archaeologists. Okay, power of the word. We talk about it, like I said, but Baal needs to be woken up, he's danced around, he's fed, he's clean, he's put back to bed. Yahweh is not like that. Yahweh is not like that. Not at all. He works in his powerful and profound and mysterious way. And he's in the life of the universe in a profound way that most of the other gods simply are not. Again, most people in the ancient Near East are looking at their household gods as just things that allow their gods to help them. The Israelites have a much more cosmological view, a universe-wide view. Their God is God of the universe. Baal isn't really like that. Baal's powerful to them. Marduk is powerful. Next week I'm going to show you, I think it's Darius. He's going to say, I overthrew the Babylonians because Marduk was upset at the Babylonians for not worshiping him. All right, roger that. That's a good enough reason, I guess. Not true, but we'll be able to see that in his writings. So, all right. Number two, the Old Testament is written over a 1,000-year period. We talked a little bit about this last week. The Pentateuch, the first 5 books of Moses, probably written around 1400 AD. This depends on what your view is of when the Israelites leave Egypt. This is a huge scholarly debate. Most scholars tend to agree that it was around 1400 that they left Egypt and began their journey through the Sinai Peninsula. But there are some that think it's like 200 or 300 years after that. I tend to think it was probably about 1400 BC. It just fits a lot better. There's all kinds of things about when the temple was built and the calendars and all of that. So Moses writes the first 5 books, and then there are other writers that start to write the other books as well. They begin to be collected, like David writes many of the Psalms. Jeremiah, of course, writes Jeremiah, and he writes Lamentations, things like that. And they begin to be collected. In Jewish lore and history, we think that they think Ezra actually collected a lot of these, and certainly by 400 when Malachi is the last one to be written. That's why Malachi is actually last in our scriptures. At least I think that's why. Although they like in the Jewish Bible, you see Chronicles last, and I think they do that to just kind of wrap up and show the whole history of Israel. And that's why, again, Jesus says, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, he's showing from the beginning of time to the last person that was a prophet, according to Chronicles. He's saying from the first to the last of our Testament. And again, he's claiming that then for his own. He's saying, I'm greater than this. And again, they would either be offended or they would say, "Wow, this is the prophet that we have been waiting for." So again, by the first century AD, by the time Jesus is walking, ministering, dying, and rising, the temple and the canon of the Old Testament is probably there for a couple hundred years already. And again, remember last week we talked about, so if you're in Israel, you're speaking Hebrew, hopefully maybe even reading it if you have some literacy. But if you were in a Greek area, you're speaking Greek. And like in Alexandria, Egypt, where there is a huge Jewish population, many of them speak only Greek. So you need an Old Testament that's Greek, and that's where you get the Septuagint. That's the one Paul quotes when he talks in the New Testament. He's using the Septuagint. Based on the Hebrew Bible, the Hebrew writers wanted to make sure that everybody in the world who wanted to read the Old Covenant could read it in a language that makes sense. Well, for the eastern part of the Mediterranean, that's Greek. And again, because most people, Hebrews will speak Aramaic, they'll speak Hebrew, but most everybody speaks Greek. If you want to get by, you speak Greek in the Eastern Med. And that's why the New Testament is written all in Greek, in what we call Conine Greek. And it's very similar to the Greek we have today. Lost my train of thought. Something about Greek. Again, remember, you're an Israelite, and you want to be separate. Your worship is different than Greek worship, which is polytheistic and to them pagan. You want to be separate. So you want to make sure your practices are good practices. Because the Greek religious practices were not only different, but to the Israelites, not only idolatrous, but flat out sinful. I mean, things that they would do, the idols that they would worship. And the Israelites, the whole time, Alexander the Great comes to Israel right about 330 BC, and he takes over the place, and then his successors take over the place. The Ptolemies, and what we call Ptolemies and the Seleucids, they take over Israel, and they bring their own Greek culture with them. Then the Romans overtake that. A guy named Pompey the Great in about 60 BC. And so you add that layer as well. So the Israelites are thinking, one, we want to be separate. We want to worship Yahweh in our own way. Number two, when, oh God, are you going to take away these pagan Romans and these pagan Greeks? Because not only are they pagans, but they're messing with our Israelite brothers and sisters because they're tempting them to sin. Remember when they came to Israel, God's like, kill all the Canaanites. Make sure you get them out of there. Why? Because they interfere with true worship. Even get rid of their animals. Well, now you've got places like the Decapolis, where Jesus ministered, where you have 10 cities full of idolatrous worship. So, and by the way, I'm going to hopefully get a picture of this next week. We have found, they've dug up a synagogue near Nazareth. The first one that they've ever found in the countryside in northern Israel. And they think it was used for at least 100 years. Well, Matthew 9, verse 5, Jesus goes around the synagogues near Nazareth. So he may have taught, sat there, worshiped there, argued there. That's really cool. So we keep digging these things up. And we know through the way they do dating that they are open for business right around Christ's time. So again, the Old Testament, again, wrapped in all of this great history and archaeology. When I was in Iraq, just north of me was Ur of the Chaldees. Where Abraham was called out, a very hot place, I'm sure. As soon as God said, Abraham, go west, he's like, I gotta get out of here, it's really hot here. was no problem. Just get my stuff and camels and we'll pour out. So you can see these places, you know where they are. So, all right. So number 5, writers from the 2nd century BC to 1st century AD cite every book of the Old Testament. So when you're reading something like Josephus, or you're reading other Jewish writers, they're quoting every single one in the canon, except for 3, Ruth, Song of Songs, and Esther. Don't know why. Just Song of Songs may be too embarrassing. It's kind of personal at times. Esther, you think they'd be quoting Esther. Esther is such a beautiful statement of redemption. I don't know. If you haven't seen the Esther Veggie Tales, please, it's really good. I'm not making the king a sandwich. Tell him to make his own sandwich. It's really good. Let me tell you, you have to make the king a sandwich, you die. They don't put that in there. They send everybody to the land of perpetual tickling, which is a little different than what actually happened to the people that tried to kill the king. And VeggieTales actually going to drop a piano on us. What's this piano doing about birthday cake? You know, yeah, they didn't go to tickling line. They got killed. So you know, because you don't go into you don't go into the king of Persia's presence without his permission. You don't go anywhere near him without his permission. So when Esther walks in there uninvited, she is inviting death upon herself. This is something the Israelites get. That's why I don't know why they weren't quoting it. Because they get this with Yahweh. You go in to the Holy Holies, just walk in there, you touch the ark, you're dead. You know, Esther goes in there to save Mordecai, her uncle, and her fellow Israelites. She is going to sacrifice herself. Luckily for her, the king puts out his scepter and says, please come forward, my queen. And she's able to then eventually save Israel. That's why they celebrate Purim, based on that from so many years ago.
Is that Xerxes or?
Beg your pardon?
Which king was it? Xerxes?
It wasn't Xerxes. Was it Cyrus or Darius?
Darius.
Was it Darius? Was it Xerxes? Was it? I can't remember. I'm having a brain problem here this morning. But it's one of those guys. They're all the same, though, in the sense, you know, because they say, when they say, "O King, live forever," they're serious. He's God represented on earth. He is divine in himself. You know, and again, that's why the king can't change his mind, too, because his word binds the empire together. That's why the king puts his own signet ring when Daniel's in the lion's den and seals it himself.
Xerxes.
Is it Xerxes? Yeah. You see him in the 300, he gets so mad he's angry at the 300 for blocking his way through Greece. It's all diamonded out and all tricked out and all his finery. But you just don't mess with him. You know, because he's a representative of God on earth. You don't come into his holy presence. You know, with us, you know, you see Senator Warner, you might stand up when he comes in the room, shake his hand, and you're like, oh, okay, nice to see you, Senator Warner. It's great. He's occupying position of authority, but you're not going to die if you're in his presence, if you're not uninvited. You know, we just don't think like that. But the Israelites would. They get it. And we need to, when we approach the Old Testament canon, we want to think like that. You know, what does it mean to be near the temple, to be near God's presence? This is the one locality on earth where God works his salvation, and takes care of his people. And everything around the Old Testament, and the law, the prophets, and the wisdom literature reflect that. So when Jesus says, the law and the prophets testify to me, he's changing again the whole paradigm of what that means. So, all right, yeah, Ruth's, ironically, Ruth is the Old Testament reading for next week. So we'll have that next week. And Song of Songs, I said, is I don't think I've ever heard any pastor preach on songs, but that'd be a good challenge. Challenge yourself to it, you know. So maybe for a Bible study, or for a marriage retreat or something like that. All right, the destruction of the temple in 70 AD signifies the real break between Jews and Christians. We talked about this a little bit last week. Again, the Jews rebelled in 66 AD. They wipe out, I think they're a Roman auxiliary legion. They're mad because of different pagan practices in Jerusalem. Herod actually brought some pagan standards near the temple, and that just caused a ruckus. It's like a breakfast club. Can you describe the ruckus? Yes, I can. You know, this is bad. I mean, they brought like divine images of Caesar Augustus, who's by then dead, but he's divine, he's a god. Well, You can't bring that anywhere near Israel. For that and for a bunch of other things, the Israelites rebel. A guy named Vespasian comes in, and he just takes out the Israelites and eventually drives towards Jerusalem. He ends up becoming emperor in 69 AD. He has to leave. He leaves his son Titus to destroy the temple. Vespasian actually becomes emperor. The Roman Empire almost fell apart in 69 AD. There were 4 emperors. Vespasian ends up bringing stability, and they bring the temple treasures in 70 AD to Vespasian to have a triumph through Rome with the candlesticks, and they actually have an arch where you can see the candlesticks of the temple. Now imagine you're an Israelite, and now not only do you know a lot of people have been killed, but your physical temple is not there. Well, for Christians, they're like, well, the temple's Jesus. So it doesn't matter if there's a temple or not. So there's a real break. Before that, so many of the Christians had been from a Jewish background, with some people becoming Christians from other backgrounds. But now, after 70 AD, not many Jews become Christians. It's other people who aren't from a Jewish background become Christians. It's a real break from that. And then you start to collect, the Christians begin by that time already collecting the Gospels and the book of Acts. And I think Acts is definitely written before 64 AD because it doesn't mention the fire of Rome. It would have. That fire of Rome almost totally destroyed many parts of Rome. And the Christians there were crucified, lit on fire, literally lit on fire like lampposts, and destroyed they were killed by lions. That Nero did all that. That would have been mentioned. Or the temple being destroyed 6 years later, 70 AD. Acts doesn't mention this, so I think it was written just before 64 AD. Yeah, by the way, Nero blames Christians. I think we talked about this last week. He blamed Christians because they weren't worshiping their gods. And it happened July 18th, which is their high holy day in Rome. 390 BC, the Gauls had come down and destroyed Rome. So it was very important that the Romans very important to the Romans that they observed their own liturgies and their own appreciation of the gods, because this might happen again. Well, the Christians aren't doing it. Here you have a fire on July 18th, see it's the Christians' fault. They're not worshiping as we do. This is going to happen to us again, kill them. And that's what happened. So I think Acts and the Gospels are certainly written before 64 because they would have certainly mentioned this horrific moment in the lives of Roman Christians. It's another reason why Mark is written, by the way. And Mark is written for persecuted people. If you're ever feeling bad and you're hurting, or you know somebody who's really hurting, and they want to read a gospel, have them read Mark. They need an epistle, have them read 1 Peter. You know, Matthew is written for Jewish folks who are becoming Christians. Luke is written to catechize new Christians. Mark is written for the persecuted man or woman. Mark is written by Mark in Rome. Mark says the Christians in Rome, they wanted an account of Jesus, and he gives them one. What a good thing to have if you know you're going to be put on a pole with ropes and tar pitch lit on fire. I want to read Mark, and that's what they get. So they're collecting that all by 65 and 70 AD. All right, like I said, the Septuagint is the Greek Old Testament. That has the Apocrypha. If you read a Catholic Bible, in the back you have the Apocrypha. Is it 11 or 12 books? I can't remember the Apocrypha. But the Hebrew Bible does not have the Apocrypha. Jerome puts it in the 4th century, and Luther puts it in his German Bible in 1534. But it's again, the Apocrypha is written for edification of people, but not part of the canon, because it fails that 3-part test, that it's not written by the apostles, it's not orthodox, and it doesn't have enough Christology to make the canon. So again, we talked about the Bible being supported by a great depth of archaeological, geographical, and historical evidence. I just told you about the temple that we have just, or the synagogue that we just found in Nazareth. Let me back up 1 second here. I think I forgot something. Oh, so I want to back up to number 6 for a minute. When Jesus is baptized in the Jordan by John the Baptizer, and you hear the voice, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased," that would harken to two different Old Testament texts. My beloved Son is Psalm 2. If you're in the liturgy, if you're listening to what the rabbi you're starting to connect that to this person here, this Jesus. And then when, in whom I am well pleased, well, that's the service song. So Isaiah 53, when Jesus is, which is again Isaiah, talking about what's going to happen to Jesus. So again, the canon is being said to the Israelites. When they see things happening to Jesus, they can begin to relate them to the Psalms and things like Isaiah. It begins to turn their attention then from the temple, from the Old Testament, to this New Testament, to this new thing on the scene, this one they call Jesus the Christ. Remember when the wise men go to Herod? Where is he to be born? Well, that's Malachi 5:2, in Bethlehem, in the house of David. Okay, send him down there. Tell him, when you find him, come back. So I'm being pushed at him as well. And he was not telling the truth. He wanted to kill him, of course. Herod the Great was a little nuts. He had been king for, I think, 30 years. He actually rebuilt quite a bit of the temple. But he was getting pretty old. Nothing against getting old. But he was a little paranoid about his kingdom. And he knew that his kingdom really depended on the favor of Caesar Augustus. He wanted to make sure that, and of course the Israelites had a history of rebellion, so he wanted to make sure that there were no kings other than him in Israel. He drowned his own brother. He drowned the high priest. Not a good guy. He actually ordered that when he died, like 2,000 people would be killed in the Colosseum in Caesarea Maritima, so that all of Israel would lament while they were lamenting his death. Not a nice guy. So I have no doubt that if he could have got his hands on Jesus, he would have killed him. Put that over here. Imagine what it must have been like to be Herod, though. Herod has a background. He understands Israelite society, but he likes Roman society. He likes all the good stuff that comes around with being a Roman. He likes the power. And now there's this new king being born. The Persians come from the east and say, where is he? Well, let's look at Malachi, chapter 5, verse 2. Now remember, 400 years, God has not said very much. But all of a sudden there's a star in the east. There's a king, and more, where? And then a few years later, of course, John the Baptist says, look, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. He's pointing at it. Well, who is this Lamb of God? That's a pretty big statement that he's saying. So, all right. Let's see. Masada is 73 AD. So the Romans destroyed the temple in 70 and effectively ended the rebellion. But there are Israelites that hold out. And they hold out in a place called Masada, which is near the Dead Sea. It's also near where John the Baptizer was beheaded, right across the Red Sea there. The Romans, you got to give it to them. They didn't stop for anything. The first thing they do, if you never go to Masada, the first thing you should see is this kind of, I'll show you where they built a wall around it. You can check out any town you like, but you can never leave. They built a wall around it. You can come down the mountain, but you're not escaping. And they just waited them out. And they eventually all the Israelites just killed themselves. Or they killed their families and they killed themselves before they had the unclean hands of the Romans. And then, we talk about places like Aleppo, which I know are horrible right now. They're subject to bombing raids, gas attacks. You have nations and terrorists just at each other's throats. And 70 AD and people are reduced, maybe even cannibalism. Romans are coming in, and again, our temple's destroyed, and then we're dispersed as well. They take the survivors and they make them slaves and throw them somewhere else. So let me talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls. So the oldest, before 1947, the oldest text we had was a Masoretic text, 1006 AD. Until 1947, when a shepherd in the Dead Sea found in these pots what became the Dead Sea Scrolls, 19,000 fragments that we have now, for 60 years, been able to unroll and search and put back together. Many of them are in fragments, and they belong to 800 different scrolls. And it's really cool because, like I said, I think I wrote it here, there's 36 copies of Psalms. And guess what? They're all the same. And they look like our Psalms from years and years ago. So now you have Dead Sea Scrolls that are at least 100 years old when Christ is walking the earth. So you have a 1,000-year jump from the text that we had, 1000 AD. Now we have something that's 1,000 years old in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So for 60 years, they've been taking the text and they've been putting it back together piece by piece. Of course, they'll imagine you might have a piece that big, and then there's no chapters and verses. So you have to figure, what is this, Deuteronomy? Well, maybe Isaiah. What do you think, Stan? Deuteronomy. Okay, Rob. Oh, I know this writing sample. This is from Job the Scribe. I recognize it from this scroll. So you look at evidence from how everybody's got a writing style. A lot of times that can help you determine which scroll it goes on. Infrared helps, as you can now use this technology to figure out different clues. But DNA, because it's written in vellum, it's animal skins. Well, every animal's specific. So, hey, this is Deuteronomy 18. Oh, let's make sure the DNA around this piece is the same, and then we know for sure that this is Deuteronomy 18. So they get to do that now, too. So 60 years now we have 36 of Psalms, we have 21 of Isaiah. I just wrote those as examples. There's lots of others. It's all there, I think, except for I think it's all there except for Esther. I'm not sure, but and it is spot on to what we thought. There is just spelling mistake every now and then, but as one theologian I heard say, that will not change 1 degree of hell up or down. Not bad. And remember, they don't have spell check or word count. They're going through each part of the vellum. When they're writing it, they're checking to make sure they have exactly the right words. They're taking it seriously. Why? Because it's the Word of God. The Word of God creates the world, creates light, floods the earth and kills, makes alive. So yeah, we should give it its due diligence and make it right. And when something's happening, like maybe we want to just put it in jars because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, maybe a future generation can have it. Thank God that we have these 800 scrolls. If you ever go to Jerusalem, I think there's examples all over the world. Jerusalem has quite a few of them under glass that are still being studied, still being looked at, still being analyzed today. What's the Old Testament about? Well, you guys know it's about praise. We talked about Rosh Hashanah. Creation, the fall into sin, redemption in God's grace, and wash, rinse, and repeat. That's what it's about. Over and over and over again. You go from the Pentateuch, get into Joshua and Judges. If you worship me and you follow my commands, I will bless you. If you don't, you may have a curse. And again, how many times has this happened? Where you see all of this happen. Well, these are regular people. They're just like us. They have their own idols in their own hearts. They have their own idols sometimes in their own houses. And they come back to true worship to Yahweh. This is the story over and over again. And again, this is why it's important to read these things in our divine worship, just as they read it in their divine worship. So as they saw Yahweh, so we can see our Lord Christ and how he works in his universe today. Because once again, once he dies and is raised, all authority, as he says in Matthew 28, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me, therefore go make disciples. He's got all the power. He is ruling his church. He's ruling the world. So when we look at this text, we look at the Old Testament, we see how it applies to him, and then we see how it applies then to us as well. And again, remember, they thought the Israelites, I think many of them, if you ask the average Israelite, what do you think the Messiah is going to be like? And he goes, well, I think he's going to be a king riding on a golden steed. He's going to get rid of these filthy Romans. Yeah, I agree. That's not what happened. He came in the form of a slave, even one died on a cross. And this is, again, crucifixion, something awful. And again, Romans crucify people all the time. They crucify, especially what they call in Greek lay states, robbers. People who are bandits, people who are traitors. They also always crucify them. Put them outside of town, so when you're coming in, you see somebody on a cross, you think twice about committing a crime. You commit treason against the state, you die. You rob, you die. You try to foment rebellion, you certainly die. And this is again what they get him on, right? There's no king but Caesar. Well, that much positive. I get that. And so he has to crucify. And crucifixion was something that everybody knew. Please don't make the mistake that this is a very unique situation outside of Jerusalem. In that crucifixion, it only happened to Jesus. It happened all the time. And it was a gruesome way to die. It's unique in that it saves the world, saves us from our sins. But common in this sense of it is an execution, mode of execution. The Carthaginians, when their admirals would not win a battle, when they came back, they got crucified. That's a good motivation to win. You know, if you don't win, don't come back. Okay. You know, that would be very difficult. So, and it's actually, you know, when Carthage fell in 146 BC, they had this huge temple of Baal right downtown Carthage. And the Romans were getting to that last. They were actually taking the apartment blocks brick by brick. And it said that the senior general, his wife, took their 2 sons and just ran right into the fire of Baal. Because when you're a Baalist, you take your firstborn son and you throw him into the fire. And showing that you're a sacrifice, showing that you love Baal. You always take the firstborn and throw him into the fire. Or the priest takes him from you and throws him in, and they blow the swarm. And you go in. But they said that she wanted to show true Carthaginian courage and true devotion to Baal. And went right into the fire. Just a terrible image. Not something that's demanded. You know, and contrapose that then with someone who's a Christian person who says, you know, I'm not going to kill myself. If you want to kill me, that's fine. Because I know in my death, I will witness to Christ. And I know that I will be raised on the last day. So no matter what you do with me, you burn me, you have me eat by lions, or you just kill me, starve to death, I know that the Lord of the universe will raise me from the dead. That is a profound statement, especially in Greek society, where they don't believe in resurrection. They say, you're dead, just go to the world of shadows. Remember the movie Russell Crowe, Gladiator, shadows and dust. Remember his boss says that all the time? Shadows and dust. That's what they believe. And I think a lot of people believe that today. We're just kind of in this number. Wrong. You go to heaven, you go to hell. And then at the end, you're raised. And you go to the new creation, or you go to lake of fire. There's no third place. There's no default. So, you know, for us, kill us the way you want to kill us, that's fine. For I know that somebody lives inside me, the risen Christ, and that's much better. So, all right, let's see. So again, 400 BC, this is number 14. First century AD was called an intertestamental period. Again, a time of great change in Israel. No more prophecies. God is silent. The Greeks and Romans come in. By the time Jesus' ministry, I think the Israelites were very primed for their Messiah. There have been false Christ, false Messiahs already portrayed. Finally Jesus comes, especially John the Baptizer first, and then Jesus, and then the new ministry, the new temple in Jesus' body. And again, lastly, the Israelites worked diligently, very purposefully, to keep their culture and their religion distinct. This is where you get Pharisees, separated ones. We see Pharisees negatively, but they're a reaction to Greco-Roman culture. Say we want to keep ourselves separate so we can true worship, so our sons and daughters can understand our religion, because they had read Joshua and Judges. They knew that it only took a generation or two before Israelites would submit to paganism and become unbelievers. It's important for us too. You know, how do we teach our children, bring them up in the ways of the Lord, as the Psalms say and the Proverbs say. You know, it only takes a generation or two. So when he's talking to the Pharisees, you know, he says, if you know Moses, then you would recognize me. How angry that would be. Hey, I know Moses. I've read the whole Old Testament in Hebrew. I have a scroll at my house. You know, well, I am the way, the truth, and the life. He that believes me, though he dies. Okay, roger that. So either he's liar or Lord. You know, if he's liar, he needs to be put away. He's a blasphemer. If he's Lord, he deserves his worship. He deserves our worship. So we have time for 2 questions, and then we got a split for worship. Please.
When was the rest of the Old Testament chapters written after the first 5 of Moses?
We don't know. It's hard to know. It's hard to know.
What took place in Babylon? Was that just rewriting the first 5?
We have a lot of the texts. I should probably get into that later with where we have different texts in the we call Babylonian Talmud and different things where those things are rewritten. Some of them are very, very full of good treasure. Like you know, we believe David wrote Psalms, so we know David lived around 1000 BC, so it had to be produced then in Jerusalem, and was probably collected then. But you're right, I mean, like Ezra, we think Ezra collected the entire canon. That makes sense, because Ezra had been brought back to Jerusalem from exile. One of the things he's going to do besides rebuilding the walls and rebuilding the temple is rebuild the canon and make sure it's correct. So it's hard to know. This is where we have to be very careful about guessing. We know approximately when Isaiah lived. We know almost exactly when he lived, like around 800 BC, 8th century BC. So we know he wrote Isaiah then. But how it was collected and put into the canon, not quite sure. But that it certainly was in circulation, not only then, but all the way through and even till today. We think actually Isaiah was put in a barrel and sawed in half. Bad way to go. Manasseh was the king, and Isaiah would be in his face like, Manasseh, you are worshiping. I mean, we're talking about worshiping false gods. At least, you know, go big or go home. This guy worshipped everything. And so Isaiah, who was a good, what they call the evangelist of the Old Testament, is like, you know there's a better way. You are Israel. That's the thing that I think John the Baptizer is so good at, too. Because John is in the river, he's wearing camel's hair, he's eating wild locusts. I don't know how I did that. Maybe some chocolate. But you look and you say, okay, I've got Pharisees over here, they're separated ones, they're trying to do what's right, but I see this guy over here, he's trying to point me in the right direction. So no matter what you're doing, you always look over and you say, okay, is this a true Israelite? Of course, Jesus says, yeah, this is the greatest. No one is greater up to John, right? That there's something more, there's something better. And I think we tend to do that. I mean, when you see a cop, at least I do, when I see a police officer, I slow down. Why? Because I'm speeding. I see the law. You know, if I became Manasseh, I see the prophet Isaiah, and I see the representative of God on earth, right? And I know I'm worshiping false gods, and I've got, 200 mistresses, or whatever he was up to, killing the prophets of God, not doing very well. So either you get rid of Isaiah, or you repent. Well, he sawed him in half in a barrel, so I guess he chose that road. But, you see these, and these are so important to us then. Because we see these things, and we say, oh yes, there's a better way. Lord, destroy my own idols in my life, and let me see clearly the risen Jesus. The one who forgives my sins, forgives the sins of the world, and will raise me on the last day. So that my hope is really the same as the Israelite who worshipped in the temple. When Jesus was walking around, the Israelites said, I'm waiting for the Messiah. I'm waiting for him to come. I've read Isaiah, and I've read the Psalms. I'm waiting for him to come. We say the same thing. I've read the Psalms. I've read Isaiah. No, I've read Mark too, and Romans. And I'm waiting for him to come back. That's the canon. You're really the same as those Israelites in 1st century AD. That's why Paul calls us the new Israel in Romans. Because we have that same expectation because the Messiah is working salvation for us right here, right now. Good enough? Go in peace. Thank you very much.